We start recording. Okay, we are live. It is June 11th. It is another Wednesday and an amazing day. Beautiful, clear skies, 82 degrees in Austin, Texas. We have a great guest with us today, and we have a lot to talk about, from riots to demonstrations to whatever else is going on in the world. But before we get going, let's have our own John Sibley Butler play some intro music.
Amarillo by morning, up from San Antonio. The only thing that I've got is what I've got on. When that sun is high in the Texas sky, I'll be looking at the county fair. Amarillo by morning, Amarillo, I'll be there. You want to do the second verse? Do it. I lost my fella in Houston, broke my leg in Santa Fe. I lost a wife and a girlfriend somewhere along the way. When they open that gate, I'll be looking for hate. Lord, I hope that judge ain't blind. Amarillo by morning, Amarillo's on my mind.
Well done, Johnny. So lots of things that I want to talk about real quick, Johnny. The grid is looking fine. Apple made some serious announcements yesterday or Monday. I'm sorry. All their operating systems are going to get upgraded to 26. That's the new name for the OSs. They're introduced something called liquid glass. They are trying to make all their devices be seamless, so you can move around and work and do all kinds of things. There's all kinds of acquisitions going on. Qualcomm is buying all kinds of things, and NVIDIA is building all kinds of stuff and partnerships, and the hyperscaler data centers are going crazy, and startups everywhere, AI everywhere, gazillion unicorns being planned out. I'm telling you, I've never seen so much movement and energy, and no pun intended on that. It's just crazy. So what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Well, I think the tools are changing. I mean, what we do as human will remain constant. That is, the tools will change how we order food, how we do food, we do everything, right? And the question that we have is, how will the tools affect business enterprise? But what we're doing now, we're putting in new tools. Just as we put in new tools when the trains came along, when television came along, when the airplanes came along, well, we changed our tools. Now, what's different about this tool is that it's trying to be us. You look at AI, it's literally trying to be us. So yes, there is a huge movement, a reality movement among the board of directors in America. That generation know little of AI, of technology, but it never does. And what would happen is that they will learn, and the process will go on. We can think when people used to do the stock market by hand, people used to do everything by hand. They used to do all of the trading by hand, and then the computers came along. And then, of course, with regression analysis, then we got, AI, the computer picking stocks for us. That's been going on for a long time. So Andres, I think you've got two things about this technology here. Who will lose their jobs? How many jobs will be created because of the technology, right? And how will enterprises, and this will go from elementary schools to Apple. This is not just something for Apple or for Microsoft or for US Steel. It's not
Right.
something just to train managers on for major firms. This will affect relationships and families. It will affect homework, how kids do homework, how kids learn, how kids manipulate themselves through the world. And we know that kids say the darnest things, and they're always as good as they can be. So what I'm seeing, Andreas, is a lot of application and a lot of worry about AI combined with what's happening in America. And I can tell you this, that the theoretical question that we're asking in America, I wasn't going to say it, but I will now, is that is America becoming a colony of China? So what does that mean? Just as we were a colony of England, so if you were to go down to San Francisco and look at what's going out of America to China, it's going to be the raw materials. Well, it might have some other kind of stuff, but most are raw materials. And what's going to come back, right, coming back from the East would be televisions, automobiles, forks, cans, and everything that we use. So one of the theoretical questions we must ask from our scholarly days is, to what extent are we representing a colony? But remember that when we looked at a lot of the economists 30 years ago, they said it was okay. Go back and look at what Keynes was saying in economics.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of movement, Andreas, because there's a lot of uncertainty. Some of the movement is forced, such as federal people from the federal government losing their jobs around the country. And remember, it used
Mm-hmm.
to be that we thought that was a pretty safe place to work. You get a good federal job, you have a great retirement. Well, that's just as volatile now as working at Microsoft, who might lay off 30,000 people themselves. So there's a lot of movement because there's a lot of stuff happening. What we're going to have to do now is get through the political stuff I think that's happening now. I think that from my point of view, it's the law of the land. It is the basic constitution. It is what's saying when people demonstrate. I think people have the right to demonstrate if they're peacefully. I don't think that just because they demonstrate, they should be picked up by the by the law officials. I don't think that we should go to battle with LA, but I think we are, and that is kind of where we are. Now, let me say something about what I think. If you look at Andrew Jackson and you look at President Lincoln, Lincoln
Mm-hmm.
ended slavery. Can you imagine being a slave owner in 1865 or being a Southerner in 1865 and people taking away your livelihood? And remember that the first round was fired at Fort Sumter because the same reason why the first round was fired in World War II in Hawaii, because we threatened the South's livelihood, right? So can you imagine that? But Lincoln was seen as a great president. He did bold things. Andrew Jackson did the movement of Native Americans, pre-Columbian people from the East Coast to Oklahoma, and he also did some tariffs. Now, if you say who are the great presidents who do great things, so let me put on my other hat and let me put on my red hat and say maybe this president is doing something that would keep America from being a colony of another country. In my lifetime, this is the first time that I have seen, as an American soldier myself, any other country be equal to, or say they were equal to America. Remember that of the great economies that happened, Hitler in Germany, uh, we defeated Hitler, and then you go before that, and then we defeated the Japanese, and before that, we defeated Germany. So all of those things have been very interesting, but not now. I think China is a different, different kind of animal, and I would not demonize China. I would take my hat off to them because I think they did great things. I only think only about 100,000 belong to the Communist Party. I think the Chinese people is hardworking, trying to figure it out, a kind of people. But we are in a situation in America where we've never, ever been in before. And finally, the Chinese would say, okay, you upstart Americans, you're only 260 years old. We've been doing this thing for 5,000 years. Plus, you came to us and got the gunpowder that allowed you to go all over the world. So we're in a situation. Americans would have to stick with the Constitution that has made us great. The same Constitution that created the country, the same Constitution that ended slavery, the same Constitution that did a lot of stuff in the world. And of course, the same Constitution which was the last best hope for everyone in the world. So even with all the turbulence that we have now, people are still trying to get here because of the freedoms of the Constitution. And when I say freedom, I mean, Jack, making money. The freedom to make money and the freedom to have your own dreams. But right now, the American dream might be a Chinese dream because we don't have any great factories for our kids to go to. And so unless you're in the stock market, you're just you're not in the game. So you can sit home if you have money in the stock market, let your money make money for yourself. But for the average person in America, 40 to 50%, they need a job, and that's their stock market. Their monthly check is their stock market. So Andreas, but the country has always seen turbulent times, and if we stick to the Constitution, then I think we'll be okay.
Absolutely. Llewellyn, what say you? Conclusion. You're muted somehow.
You're muted, Llewellyn.
Got it. Sorry about that. We're in a very dangerous moment because for the first time, really since the end of the Second World War, we are turning our backs on science. What this administration is doing to the research capacity of this country is tragic, terrible, and frightening because once you lose your place on that escalator, you don't get it back in 4 years or 3 years and some months. You don't suddenly get back to it. I have been researching as best I can and reading as widely as I can. To Johnny's point, there's a frightening piece in Time magazine about car manufacture and how automated and how smooth and scientific it is in China. There's a frightening article on Trump's war on science in The Economist, and two former, one of whom I know, John Hultgren, two former presidential science advisors have put out a paper in the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists saying that it is just catastrophic. It's not just that the money has been halved everywhere, from the National Institutes of Health to the Department of Energy, and on and on and on. Our research capacity is being hollowed out sort of mindlessly, without any cohesion, without any plan, in much the same way that the federal workforce has been cut without any real idea of who is being cut and what their role was, and whether they will have to be hired back. But there's something that's very important in research, and scientific research especially, and that is, I went to my friend at Brown University, used to be head of computer sciences there. He's retired now, John Savage, and I said to him, I said, John, what is the most important thing in research? And he said, passion. And this is so terribly important, and you cannot put numbers on it. But if you take a research project and then you stop it, you don't come back 3 years later and fire it up again just because you put the money back. The people have gone, they've lost their edge, they've lost their enthusiasm. It is going to fail. It is not going to succeed. This is a seminal moment in American history when for the first time we have turned against science. We have a series of ideas out there that are half-formed, that are incoherent. I just came back from London where I spoke at the Association of European Journalists meeting, and boy, did I get an earful. There was an earful to be heard of disillusioned, unhappy people, many of whom had served in America. These are senior journalists from major publications, The Economist, Times, etc., and Financial Times, just shattered by what the Trump administration is doing to European security. And that was followed very quickly by the head of NATO giving a speech telling the Brits if they didn't do something about their defense system, they'd be speaking Russian. He calculated that by 2030, Russia would be in a position to overrun Europe. These are very grave matters. They are not being addressed by the political class. They are not being addressed by the administration, which doesn't seem to have the intellectual horsepower to grasp the responsibility that it has seized. So we're in a very awkward situation. We're still the great research machine of the world, but it's slowing down rapidly, and our best minds are being tempted to go all over the world, including China. But there's not a country in Europe with any sort of university system that hasn't said, come here, we want you, whether it is Britain or France or Germany, it doesn't matter, or Italy. We are going to lose our talent, and I fear we're going to lose our way, and it's a terrible moment.
Let me be the ultimate optimist as usual, and I think that somehow, while what's happening has consequences, I think that any crisis always creates an opportunity. I think that the private sector is probably looking at this as an amazing opportunity for stepping in and not relying on the university systems and others to create the thrust of the innovation, which actually happens mostly outside of the university systems and the daily labs.
That's not strictly true. If you look at any of the great driving forces in contemporary society, the internet, etc., the degree of computer sophistication we have, these things all came out of the federal government, as did the state of aviation superiority that we have enjoyed. I was at the Aspen Institute some years ago when this was debated, and James Schlesinger was still alive, and he was chairing that session, and he was able to list 21 major things that would not have happened. The electromagnetic revolution, which is what we're living in, why we have all of this high tech, why we have these billionaires like Facebook, and it all came from work that was driven either by anything. And in medicine, it's been driven by
Whelan, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but you're also being equivocally saying that only one method works. And I have to say to you, well, give me a moment.
Historically, sir, the research has been in the last 80 years government driven. It was not before then. It was not before the Second World War. But it has been.
I happen to not have the same vision. So Standard Oil and AT&T created the most amount of research that we have benefited from, and they both got dismantled after being monopolies for so long. Those two organizations, the whole medical thing came out of Standard Oil. Pharmaceuticals, all that came out of Standard Oil. So I'm just saying that this is a different moment. You have large conglomerates, Microsoft, Google, Tesla, Amazon, Apple. These companies are building their own chips, building their own cars, building their own. A lot of R&D is happening on the private sector. So it's kind of interesting what's happening. I think that those companies are going to jump in and take advantage of the void, if you will, that is being created. I don't think that
a very small percentage of their gross product is now devoted to research. This was different. I agree. Bell Labs did a huge amount, but Bell Labs was also. I was at Los Alamos once, one of our great laboratories, and there was only one hotel at the time, and I was talking to a young woman at breakfast. And I said, what do you do? And she said, I sell computers. And I said, oh, that must be hard work. And she said, no, the government buys everything we make. And she worked for Cray. That gives you the kind of thing. In 1955, I was reading declassified documents recently. There was a cry that we couldn't go any further with our defense system unless we had better, what Edward Teller called better computing machines. The amount of government money that has gone since the Second World War, and by the way, a good deal of government money was spent on different projects that went through Bell Labs. It wasn't absolutely pure and uncontaminated by the government. Now, in a perfect world, the government would do all the research. But in reality, we're up against what amounts to, in China, a mercantile system, which means that the government is involved in business and protects and promotes business. I would commend that you read this extraordinary article in Time magazine, an eyewitness of the manufacture and the development of electric EVs in China. They have outstripped us. They have outstripped Tesla, and they have a very clever. They don't have a problem with charging because you just swap out the battery in the same way as you go and get some more propane.
Do you know what? Do you know why this EV revolution is happening in China? Can I tell you?
Go ahead. I know you're
Elon Musk.
Yes or no?
Can I let me speak, please? Elon Musk, in order to make cars in China, made an agreement with the government 12 years ago, and he gave all the Tesla patents away. So all the Chinese companies have copied everything that Tesla created to make the current vehicles they make. That's how the Chinese EV revolution started.
But don't you think they could have re-engineered?
And they're much better than our cars.
And there's nothing intrinsically that clever in an electric vehicle. It's a manufacturing.
Wow. Wow.
We had electric cars in the 1880s too. 1890s.
So I think that what we're discussing is really apropos for our guests, because this void of research, this void of innovation that is being subsidized by the government, again, creates a great opportunity for the creativity of the minds of the world. And let me introduce our guest, Jack Whelan, who is the Business Development Director at the International Accelerator. And Jack is an incredible guy, well-traveled, great family. He can tell us a little bit about his background, but the International Accelerator is harnessing the fact that most CEOs, most innovators globally are foreign born. They come to America because they, like me, have the passion that Llewellyn talks about to want to change the world, to want to build dreams, to want to create new things, and hence people like Elon Musk himself is a foreign-born entrepreneur. So Jack, chime in and tell us: is this scenario, is this setting creating even more opportunity for you guys are doing? What's happening with foreign-born entrepreneurs? Educate us.
Yeah, and nice to meet everybody in the audience. Of course, Andreas, John, and Whelan and I know each other, but fantastic to be involved in a conversation like this. And you look at everybody else's credentials on this call, they keep going a long way after mine, so I might have a little bit of imposter syndrome. But, I do think it's creating opportunity, and I'll say just blanketly that anytime there is friction, turbulence, whatever you want to call it, that creates opportunities and entry points for startups to disrupt. Coupled with geopolitical tensions and stuff, there's a lot of people moving around. I would say, yes, we're seeing more applications. To just comment on a few of the things, I am generally just against the tariffs and everything. I think we need to be focusing more on, and maybe this is a little bit, what's the word? Not rosy colored glasses, but a little utopian thinking of me that we could come in my lifetime, some sort of advancement towards a truly global society. I see China, they own over 50% of the patents in AI. They're committing less of their GDP than we are into research, but they have purchasing power. And I think really a lot of people like to say, oh, China, they'll never take it. Oh, 30,000 people move from China to the US every year. Of course they do, because that's intentional. And there's 1 billion people over there, 330 million here. They're going to have more people coming in our direction. But I honestly, you said that the Communist Party is about 100,000 people, and I might be wrong on the number, but I 100% agree with you. The street level Chinese woman, man, whatever, put them in America, they probably have very American sensibilities, very American habits and ideologies. The country is just run differently at the top level between government and companies. But all of this, supply chain moving back to the US, 60 years putting supply chain out to China, to building infrastructure, everything. We're not going to be able to throw the metronome and make those plans materialize here. But all of this, the silver lining in my mind, I think societally, it's a little bit of a down pull on humanity. The silver lining in my mind is all of this turbulence does create entry points for startups to come in and disrupt. And it's creating a lot of turbulence just in migration patterns where certain countries are no longer attractive anymore. A lot of businesses, especially in the kind of small, medium to enterprise level, have been thinking about opening up shop in the United States for years, probably since they first opened up shop, wherever home was for them. We are seeing an increase in companies looking to move either all operations, some operations, open a subsidiary in the US, mainly through the angelo economic side of the business, but also seeing a lot of people moving around in the startup world. It is challenging because things change so fast nowadays. It's, right now America looks like the place to be. Tomorrow it'll be England. The next day it'll be America again. The next day it'll be Portugal, all just depending on some of this stuff. But I think
I hear, Jack, that Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda, and Burkina Faso are like thriving with innovation.
Yeah, and Nigeria.
Are we getting entrepreneurs from all those countries coming here to commercialize their ideas?
We are, absolutely, and I can look at our application stack that we get in IA. I will say Africa and South America can be challenging markets because you see a lot of companies starting with bypassing traditional financial institutions, so multi-crypto exchange transactions to move money from one country to the next. A lot of those in Africa specifically do originate in Nigeria because I think Nigeria caps it at like $500 equivalent US that you can send back to wherever is home, whether that's Kenya, Ivory Coast.
Yeah. So do you guys, hold on, one last point to make, and I think Whelan should chime in on this. Are you guys familiar with the new self-propelled, self-powered car made out of in Zimbabwe? Are you guys following that? I mean, what's happening globally? It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about it now. Since the 1850 census, it's been shown that in all Western countries that newcomers are more likely to be self-employed, whether it be in technology or whether it be a restaurant. What's different now for America to me, when I look at it from a scholarly point of view, is that in early America, most of the immigrants were from the West, okay? And they assimilated into the American, quote, melting pot, right? Right now, they're from the East and they're not interested necessarily in assimilating. Have you seen Epic City that's developing outside of
Yes.
Have you seen Epic Center?
Yeah.
Epic Center is what Atlanta was to Black Americans who could not assimilate, but did well, creating its own universities, created its own college, which I think is the most fabulous thing that's ever happened here in America. But we have a group now who is saying that we're not going to assimilate. We're going to build an Epic Center. It's going to be upscale. It's going to be based around the Muslim religion. It's going to have its own universities, its own education system, and of course, I call that homophily, birds of a feather flock together. So I think what has changed in America is the willingness to assimilate into the culture of America, which was Christian. On the East Coast was settled by Christians who was running from oppression in Europe. So you can go back to Jamestown, you can go back to the early days, you can go back to the founding of Princeton University, which was done by our Christian monks. You can go back to Duke University, it's a Methodist school, and etc. So how did you see two things? I think that that people will not have to move to make money now. Did you see that? In other words, I can do my own company in Uganda, right? and use American resources and do just as well, right? So in your international stuff, the process of creating companies. So when we had the Austin Technology Incubator, Laura Kiltrees, we had them in our ecosystem. Now the ecosystem is digital. Or is it true, as we like to say in cluster theory, that great minds would still want to cluster together, or as Michael Porter would say in cluster theory, that great companies would still want to cluster in the same place? So with cluster theory, and of course, if you look at Austin, if you look at Silicon Valley, hey, 50% of those companies were Indian or Chinese. All right, they were not Americans, right? So how do you see assimilation coming to America, staying out of America, but using American resources? And also, I think the big one is the refusal to assimilate into American culture.
That's for you, Jack.
Let me help you out. So you go back to American cities. There was in the old days we had a little Italy, we had a little Scandinavia, but Chinatown remained. All right. When San Francisco, the Great Fire of San Francisco, they didn't want to rebuild Chinatown, but it remained. Chinatown has remained in New York City and in Austin up on Burnett Road there as well, because it's seen as an incubator for children, for incubator for immigrants who are coming over, where you don't need to speak the language to do well. So the old saying is, yes, there are two families living in Chinatown in one house, but we'll see you at the Ivy League. So my question is, and it was all based on business enterprise, the early incubator. So how do you see immigration homophily creating business communities, or is to how high-tech communities just assimilating with the companies that you are doing?
Yeah, I think cluster theory, I am a big believer, right? I mean, look around the world and there's your evidence in my mind. I'm not really interested in debating that part of it. And I think you talk to a lot of entrepreneurs and they'll tell you, like, if you want to be successful, you need to be in an exciting city with other intelligent people, with the resources available. You look at Paul Graham says this about why was San Francisco a good place for Y Combinator? Because there's there's technology businesses that have created excess capital that sits in the pockets of people that are interested in furthering technology. So it's that concentration of resources, I think, will always be, it's human nature, right? To want to, this is fantastic. We're able to do this on Zoom. I think everyone's in Austin at the moment, but just as well, Whelan, you could be in London, and John, you could be overseas somewhere, and Andreas could be somewhere else, and we can still do this stuff. The virtual side of work is great, I think, for patching things together between in-person meetings. This is very Neanderthalic of me to say, but humans like other human company. I like to go into the office. I just as well like to work from home if I've got an upset stomach, right? It's a nice convenience for us to have. Do I think that is going to overcome the human desire for human connection? No, I think cluster cities will always exist. We'll probably find, I think we've already found a hybrid of, in person, but I think people still ultimately will move. I think investors drive that as well. I know a lot of investors will not invest and write checks overseas. They want the companies to be here in the market, closer to customers. And overall, I think it just creates business efficiency, especially like when I used to sell flooring and cabinets in San Antonio, all the builders were off of 1604. So that made my day very easy to plan. So there's efficiency that comes out of that. I think cluster theory will remain. Yes, AI, all this technology is going to allow us probably to have fewer in-person touch points, but look at Austin, you have all of these, founders running clubs, a very active city for Eventbrite, for Meetup, like people go out and find this. And I think a part of that is they're not getting it in their workday because they're not interacting with people, which is fantastic for building community. You want to start a new group, whatever the case may be, but people crave it no matter how convenient working from home is.
Okay.
Llewellyn?
I'd like, Jack, for you to tell us a little more about your company, its mission, and give us some guide as to its size and effectiveness.
Absolutely. Yeah. So International Accelerator has been around since 2012, and really all started with one company. That would be Skooks, which is, Better to be lucky than smart was our first unicorn. Had a partial exit around 3 years after that in 2015. Both Skooks and Restream actually had secondaries transactions. That allowed us to scale out, build a team, hire more staff, and really create more of a programmatic structure for the accelerator. I think when Skooks came through, there was not really a defined program. It was a little bit more, okay, let's go find some revenue and see what we can shake up, and a little bit more probably cavalier. Very successful for them. And that built the platform. I mean, that's the impact, the outsized impact that venture investment can have, is that built the platform that we've now brought, I think, 58 companies individually from 29 countries around the world. And we're helping them with everything. I think a quick way to say it, just keeping time in consideration. Our goal is to take a pre-seed, seed stage company that has a product and get them to a Series A funded company here in Austin over the course of about 6 months. So we're providing housing, office space, business development support, fundraising support, and have a portfolio of above $1 billion at the moment.
Give us a few companies or their products that you've been instrumental in bringing them to market in the US.
Yeah, some of the big ones I've mentioned already. Skooks, of course, is kind of a learning development platform. They're not creating content or anything. They are the dashboard to house a company's training materials and do the provisioning of that training. They had a ton of success with enterprise, with Department of Defense. We are quite broad in terms of our thesis, or historically we're even more broad, where we had even hardware companies. M Aerospace makes 3D printers that are about the size of my house. That's living in Austin, Texas for you, but they are large 3D printers. On the China topic, Restream, another one of our unicorn companies, they are basically exactly what they sound like. You stream something to one website and it gets pushed out to the 37 largest by viewer count streaming platforms in the world, including China. So if you're a YouTube influencer and you're making $100,000 streaming in the States, you go stream that to China, there's 1 billion more people in your audience. So really opening up the world and moving back to this kind of global community. But those were two of the very early successes. Some of the active companies at the moment right now. Another one of kind of an interesting one, because it's not a software product where most of ours will be, would be Brummel motorcycle blazers. Again, exactly what it sounds like. These are DuPont Kevlar blazers that you can throw yourself off of a motorcycle with and not need to worry about contusions, skin grafts, scarring, yada, yada, yada. You've got your abrasion resistant. But they've just launched 90,000 in sales in the last month and a half. So very broad experience, though we do focus on cybersecurity, AI, fintech, medtech.
Jack, when I was researching your company before the broadcast, I was interested that you go for people who are not born in the US. Does it preclude your working with a company if its principals were born in the US?
So our requirement is that at least 15% of the equity sits with someone who was born outside of the US. So a good example of that, I always say I'm kind of someone who would slip through the cracks of IA, because I was largely raised in the States, in the United Kingdom, but happened to have been born in Saudi Arabia. So I kind of meet the criteria. I'm just lacking the company. It would not necessarily preclude if there are principals or founding team members that are born in the US, as long as there is at least one person. So that could be your COO holds 20% of the company and is from Poland, or your CEO, and the rest of the team could be here. Likewise, we don't discriminate against, like, if I bring a solo founder here from pick any country but United States, the one that we can't work with, they can hire and bring on a US-based team of co-founders, although generally, especially on the kind of technical operations side, just cost of living arbitrage, it tends to be better to build some of those teams back in the home country and then focus exclusively on kind of go-to-market commercialization executive team here in the States.
Okay.
What is your
Johnny?
plan? What's your plan for the future? I mean, are you planning to grow this? Are you going to Do you solicit companies or do they come to you? What is the recruiting procedure?
Yeah, so to go in order there, our plan for the future right now, we're having some really interesting conversations about kind of international expansion, where my vision for this is that we have sort of hubs globally in some of the markets that make sense. The first one will be Saudi Arabia, that's underway, where we'll have a facility there. As far as the commercial arrangements goes, that'll be different in every country. Some countries will have, facilities for staff and budget to provide. In others, we'll have to find a different kind of commercial arrangement. But all of our, or throughout our history, the major hubs for us have been India, always will be probably the top country in terms of applications coming to us. We are the country landing partner for Invest India. So we get about 2,000 vetted startups. Generally, they've gone through some sort of acceleration program or training. So, these are not raw ideas coming to us. This has been vetted, trained, they have network in their home countries, etc. I envision, I'm sorry, getting ahead of myself, but after that, Central Eastern Europe, after that, South America, I envision us having these global hubs in Saudi, in South America, either Argentina, Colombia would make a lot of sense. Mexico City might even make more sense as Central America and South America. Singapore would be definitely a target. Singapore, South Korea, somewhere in Central Eastern Europe, I would target Poland, but we're just not there yet in that conversation. As far as the application process goes, I am traveling around from time to time. We don't have an unlimited travel budget, unfortunately. I wish we did, or I'd be at international pitch competitions every day. But of course, we have an inbound process as well as an outbound process. So I'm going out and scouting in some cases and finding the companies. In other cases, they just come and they might apply on our website, and maybe they didn't even know that much about us. They just hit apply and have a file saved with all their information that they upload. But we have that conversation, and I always explain to people my job, or that element of it, is less like a sales role. Certainly more BD in that you're talking something into existence that doesn't exist right now. But more like a college admissions counselor. Look, I want to be working with companies. We have the capacity to help 12 per year. The rest of our staff wants to be working with companies. These companies want more than anything to have an avenue of support and to land in America with friends and family through IA, because we have the network already that they can plug into. But it's about finding that right fit of who are the 12 companies out of the 6,000 that apply, who are the 12 that make the most sense. And of course, we're going to miss some and we're going to be wrong about some, but we see about a 37% historic or success rate historically, which we base by companies that raise their next round successfully after joining the accelerator. Being that we're a 6-month program, we do keep kind of a shorter time horizon on that. We're aiming to take that to 50% now that we've launched IA Global Ventures, our fund.
Jack, my ultimate question is, what do you do? What does the acceleration consist of? What is the thing that all the companies are looking for that you provide when they sign up with you?
Yeah, and I'll kind of separate this out. I like to talk about tangibles and intangibles. I would say on the tangible side, your 3 core accelerator services, office space, legal support, IT credits, largely just look the same across the board, because AWS isn't negotiating a custom deal with me versus Y Combinator versus Mass Challenge versus Generator. Kind of blanket programs. Obviously, your geography plays a difference there. 2 things super unique to us working with international founders. We guarantee, stick our neck out a little bit, and we guarantee an O1 visa. And by sticking our neck out, I mean those are bespoke applications. I don't have a drawer full of them here that I get to hand out at my discretion, but Congressman Lloyd Doggett is a huge ally to us in helping with the immigration side and getting our founders here. These are also the exact people the country was designed to attract and to bring in and recruit that top talent. So we have obviously a very good hit rate there, 100%. And we're providing housing for the full duration of the program. Actually, the founders start living at our CEO's house, Angelos Angelou. So that helps obviously bring down the burn rate. chances are our founders are moving uphill in the currency direction where they have less purchasing parity when they hit the ground here in the US. Their revenues mean less. So we're trying to balance for that. All of that, I would say, is on the tangible side. What sets us apart from another accelerator, and I would almost brand us as a market entry consultancy or market entry partner, is after this call, I'm gonna right at 3 sprint downstairs to my car, say goodbye to my parents who are visiting at the moment, and drive over to Tokyo Electron's office, where I'll be sitting there walking through an implementation call with one of our startups. That is one part of it. So we focus on business development, of course, both like presentation skills and then the actual execution. So I'll always be with the founders when they're going into meetings, unless we have a conflict. And of course, every founder is going to have a different degree of comfort with that. That is a part that they very much appreciate, especially if there's, we were talking about immigration after World War II. Where did everybody come from? Western Europe, for the most part. Some Eastern Europe. Culturally, more similar than someone moving from China, from South Korea coming over. So there are different degrees of like how easy that is or how similar your culture is in your home country. And I think that's an area that causes a lot of anxiety. It's intimidating. I can see as a founder sitting on that, wow, do I take this meeting with Dell right now or am I not ready? And this is going to be a no, and then I'll never work with Dell. So you see that kind of paralysis by analysis happening. But our full team, our Chief Growth Officer, James, our Marketing Creative Director, Sarah, our COO, Park Benjamin, he's serving as kind of a fractional CFO, but we're helping with fundraising, we're helping with go-to-market, we're doing social media execution. So really it's a way for, I always like to say the friends and family comment, IA is a way to land 9,000 miles away from home with friends and family and a few investor meetings lined up when you get here on day one. And we're tackling that through business development, through the marketing. You're also getting a team built around you. And guess what? We've all already been vetted by Angelos, by Park. There's not that risk of hiring, 10 fresh graduates out of school, having to spend 3 months training them, and then you've got 2 left at the end and you've spent $1 million on them. So yeah, it's really all about support and getting these companies off the ground.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. We had of course, in America, we had a organization of incubators from around the country. We'll meet and share ideas. Is there an international organization for international accelerators where the accelerator is in Africa or if it's in London? Do you have an international organization that you get together, or do you come in with the American Association of Incubators?
So there's not an international association that I'm aware of. That would be great if there was. I will say in this startup community, everybody knows the challenges we're facing are quite hard, which creates a huge degree of collaboration. Even if I meet someone from Estonia who's running an incubator, I'll do a favor for him and he'll do a favor for me, and vice versa, right? We're in the same game, and our goal, again, I'm being a little bit not to get philosophical here again, but like getting rid of borders, right? The borders don't matter because it's just 2 technologists talking about what's your idea, what's my idea, how can we help each other, what resources do you have that you might not necessarily need, and what do I have that I might not necessarily need. So I find that there's, even without some sort of backbone organization to create structure around that, people in this community and venture in the accelerator world generally are very willing to work together, very collaborative. But it would be great if there was an organization like that.
Okay, well, I have an hypothesis I want to ask you about. I think most of the money now in family offices, I think they're trillions. I think they're going to replace private equity in the future.
Yeah.
I think that most countries are broke. I think America's broke. I think England is broke. I think France is broke. I think China is broke. And I think most of the money is now in family offices and not necessarily private equity. Where do you get most of your funding now? Is it international funding? Is it how do you seek funding for your companies when you help them seek funding? Where do they go? Is it family offices now, or is it VCs? I think VCs are. Where is it?
Yeah, and absolutely. If you look at our kind of investor network, right?
Yeah.
Within the fund, IA Global Ventures, of course, we have, we're capped at 100 LPs. There's something around 30, 35 at the moment. So that's a little easier to define. Definitely very local to Austin for the most part, but we've got LPs all over the world. IA is not really running that. There are a few LPs in IA, but when we're sourcing investment, that's entirely external for the most part, or was for the last 8 years until we launched the fund. We've raised 175 million that way. I would say more driven by kind of the maturity of the venture ecosystem in Austin when we started, although that's getting more and more and more mature. But more so driven by the stage of companies that we're looking at. Your VCs, more and more, the high watermark is $1 million in ARR. They want you to be here to have a company formed, to have raised some friends and family money, have a certain amount of revenue, etc. Then they will take a meeting and talk to you. So of course, we'll have companies that start with 0 in revenue. We have a company that's active in the program right now doing 25 million in revenue back in India. QNU doing quantum encryption, full-scale deployment across the federal space in India. So some of them we will funnel right into your institutional VC investors, your Silvertons, S3 Sapphires. Others that are a little bit earlier stage, maybe still behind the product. We're going to go to individuals.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm getting a little bit. In some cases, it may just be someone that worked in that industry and is well-to-do and wants to affect a change. Maybe they also have that immigrant story of coming to the United States and that resonates with them. But everywhere in between, I will say, absolutely, I agree on family offices. I think they have a lot of flexibility in their mandate by the nature of being family offices. That allows them to not be pigeonholed into a strategy. I don't think private equity is dying. I know I've read the articles and everything, and I think at a certain point, right, it does start to die. But I have several friends who've just launched private equity funds and they're buying up roofing companies and HVAC companies. I think a huge trend to think about is money trying to get out of China and into private investments in the United States. I know it's a capital controlled market. I think it would be impossible to figure something out there. For publicly traded equities, I think it could probably be done in the private equity space. That could be a really interesting dynamic with this wealth transition.
Hey, Jack, I have a question. What are your thoughts? Maybe you guys haven't thought about it, but maybe you have already. So there's plans for a Texas stock exchange in Dallas. Do you see that as an accelerator element to the notion of moving to Texas and the success of the International Accelerator? Would that help at all? What are your thoughts?
I think so. I mean, at its basest level, it's going to create excitement and some media and blah, 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 blah. Like, now that's a pretty cheap thing to say. Now, at its highest level, is it a path to exits and does it increase the liquidity of, there are a lot of funds, a venture fund with $1 billion portfolio. It's like, not if you need to liquidate today, then you'll just see what you can get out of it. But if you're able to wait and let those companies naturally get to exit, fantastic. When the M&A markets dry up, generally I would say the IPO markets are first to go, and then it's, you're focused on M&A. There are certain sectors, cybersecurity, M&A seems to just never go away. I think it would absolutely be another sort of end to the story for some of these companies and an option where they're going to make the same as if they IPO in New York City, probably not. But if it's even an option for like going public earlier at a lighter valuation and getting money from not trying to convince one VC to hand you $2-3 million, but trying to convince a bank to underwrite you to go out and market the security, I think could absolutely be a path for widening the opportunities for entrepreneurs to come to Texas.
Yeah, true. Jack, some years back, I did an article with Ora Swede on military capital in the Israeli military, and I saw that that was the mother lode of international incubation, and that appeared in the Journal of Armed Forces and Society. And what's the mother lode now for international incubators? I mean, is it Texas? Is it you? Is it still? I thought it was Israel, and I think they did it through the military, which, by the way, came from America. That's what we did in the early days. So my question is, where's the mother lode now? What's your counterpart in London? What's your counterpart in other places across the world? I mean, what's my choice? If I have a company, do I want to come to you? Do I want to go to New York? Do I want to go to Boston? What's in Boston? What's for international kinds of development?
Yeah. And I think, like, of course, I'm a huge fan of Texas, and I think Texas has a lot going for it. You know, huge economy. We're seeing more and more organizations just like us popping up, and I say, welcome. The world is big enough for more. We're only expanding the opportunity. You're seeing the venture market grow. That, I think the US has a distinct advantage in just the huge population. I think there are a lot of cities that could support a venture ecosystem. They just don't have it yet because maybe they were aligned more with traditional industry. I mean, look at startups coming out of Dallas versus coming out of Austin. You'd think we were in two different countries. Hard to say, is there an international hub? Israel, of course, will always be a fantastic, startup nation. The name didn't get given by accident. I think Israel struggled a little bit, and maybe Israeli startups are underrepresented in Texas specifically because there was a valuation premium. If you're coming out of Israel at an idea stage and you've just finished your product, you might get a $10 million valuation, or someone in Austin might get a 5. That kind of made San Francisco the only stopping place for them, or the only landing place for them in the States. Of course, New York, Boston. I think of Boston as really the hub. If you're in biotech, probably Boston is the best for you to be. It's a much more capital intensive business. I think it's more research than operations, and you can have a Series F company that's a couple guys in a lab, and has traded ownership 7 times up until that point. But internationally, I mean, India, of course, largest growing democracy, huge ally of ours. Like I said, we've always had tons of applications out of India. A lot of good organizations there. Lisbon in Portugal, Brazil, Florianopolis in Brazil, a lot of green tech, climate tech startups. So I always say, look at your sector, right? There has to be sector alignment, and then you're still going to have probably 4 or 5 options.
Yeah. And that's probably because of the trust. There was a lot of trust in the American system still, is what you're saying. So when we say we have 300,000 Chinese coming here, they're bringing their money into the American system that is more protected of it. If, once they get kind of wealthy in China, they want to move and put their money here. So I think what you're seeing is a trust factor with startups.
Yeah.
And remember that in most countries, you just can't come and start a business. Even when we went to China, you had to partner with another Chinese company. But in America, you can come here, do well, and we'll put you in the Wall Street Journal and brag on you. Right.
Yeah. Don't even have to come in some cases.
Right. Okay.
Final thoughts, guys. Whelan? You're muted.
I think this is very interesting, Jack, and I'm fascinated. I hope that there's not a serious, because of politics, a serious falling off in international interest in America as a business center. It has been the absolute place to be. I was with a company in New York recently, an AI company, and all of the employees were not born in this country. They were born in Europe, a lot of them born in India. And we sat around and talked about why none of us had been born in America, and yet we had made our lives and our careers in America. And it came down to one word: opportunity. I hope that we don't discourage it either politically or economically, or because we undermine our position as the can-do country and can let you do country. There was a book written decades ago, about more than 60 years ago, called The Waist High Culture. But the one thing it did say was America was a yes culture and most of the world was a no culture. I fear, but I'm not sure, that we might be moving from being a yes culture to a no culture, which would basically end this extraordinary period of nearly 100 years of American ascendancy.
Yeah, I think the country is much better off the more companies that we have. Of course, I was involved in taking Austin, Texas to a Whelan of technology to where it is now. And I've always said the more companies that we can produce, the better off the region is, and the better off the country is. You know, in a way, we started over in the 1970s. That is when the world fell around our ears with losing to the automobile industry and all the competition and steel closing and the creation of the Rust Belt. We went back and created case studies of the Rockefellers and the Fords and the Vanderbilts and the people who built America, and introduced them to American universities, saying this is our true history. And they were called robber barons back then because of the political stuff. But we said they were also entrepreneurs, and we had one question: what did they do? What are the lessons that we can learn from them? So I've always said that in any community, that the more enterprises that you have, the better off you are, and the more jobs are created. Yes. So keep doing the work. Keep doing the work.
Jack, always a pleasure to have you. I think that you guys are just scratching the surface, and I hope the International Accelerator grows 100-fold in the next 5 years or so. I know you're doing a terrific job, and continue to juggle too many balls, and maybe part of your title at some point is master magician.
Yeah. I love it. Well, thank you guys, and I'll echo that. I think there's a lot of good work for us to do. We're, like you said, we're scratching the surface at 12 companies. If we were better resourced, I don't think we would ever want to have 500 companies at a time. That's dilutive on the impact that we want to have in these individual companies. But expansion to be preparing companies even better to have IA be the final landing place when you get here into America. If we could accelerate that, push some of the training and stuff out geographically, maybe it's that we're running, instead of a 6-month program, a 3-month program, a 2-month program, a 1-month program, and getting companies through with laser focus.
Yeah.
I'm glad to be a part of something like this, that, we're on the right side, I think, when it comes to international collaboration, and it's been a fantastic conversation.
It's good. And don't forget to read all of my books and all of my articles on this topic.
Send me those Amazon links.
Yes, I will.
Thank you. I've got to go. Cheers,
Okay.
and good luck to you, Jack.
Take us away, Johnny.
Thanks,
All my bags are packed. I'm ready to go. I'm standing here outside your door. I hate to wake you up and say goodbye. But the dawn is breaking, it's early morning. Taxi birds on his horn. Go ahead. G. All right. So lonesome I could die.
Sorry, I'm playing a different song.
Leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. There's so many times I've let you down. So many times I played around. I tell you now that they don't mean a thing. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go.
Linda is singing along here.
On a jet plane, don't know where I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. Come on, yeah. I think I woke Linda up back there. That's a great song done by John Denver. It's a great song.
Absolutely.
I hear you now. You can't go, Andreas. You got to play.
See you guys.
Come on, Jack. Play me something.
Onda cielo, toca la sierra.
All right.
Unidos.
Okay, like I'm gonna send the recording of that song to Linda. That's what I'm gonna do. All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Okay.